Hello, and welcome to the Tuning In podcast. I'm Dana Evans, your inner voice and emotional support coach. In this podcast, we explore the deep wisdom that lives in our bodies, emotions, and inner voice. Together, we'll shed the layers that no longer serve us, creating space to tap into the flow of life and experience true ease. So, are you ready to join me? Let's dive in. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Tuning In podcast. Today, as promised, we are talking about, drumroll please, anxiety. This is part one of the 3-part emotional exploration series, where we'll be covering the 3 core emotional states that are pretty pervasive in our society. We have anxiety, sadness, and anger. And so today we are going to talk about anxiety. What we're going to cover on this episode is how does anxiety present in the system? What are signs that you have it? We all have it, okay? But we're going to talk about some really key signs. I'm going to share a very specific perspective that I carry around anxiety that has helped me and my clients with dealing with this experience. And we're going to talk about what this emotional state needs. So each of these core emotions, we will go over that over the next few episodes. But today we're going to start with anxiety. Let's dive in. These are designed to be short and sweet and give you a different perspective without overwhelming you with information, especially if you have anxiety. We don't need to give you any more things to worry about. Am I right? So here's the thing which I find is really interesting about anxiety is it's not just an individual challenge. I definitely see that we live in an anxious society. So there is this collective anxious energy that is present all throughout the world. I remember one time, not too long ago, I went to get my legs sugared, okay? It's like waxing, but with this sugar. And I'm sitting on the table, and I just felt like the lights were really bright. The music was like really intense, like music. I hear people and noises, and it was like the whole space was a bit of a stressful, anxious environment. It was not feeling soothing. It wasn't feeling calming, and it felt like the person who was doing the work, she did a great job, but I could tell she was operating on that frequency. I was laying there really trying to find presence and calm within my own system while being surrounded by that really anxious, intense energy. That's how we can imagine ourselves in life is every time you go out, every time you enter into the world, know that there is a lot of anxiety present in the humans and in the collective space. And so it takes more work for us as individuals to go below that anxiety, to go onto a different vibrational field, frequency, whatever you want to call it. We have to anchor and ground ourselves so that we don't get caught up in the anxiousness that is all around. And my goodness gracious, that can be really difficult. Know that with this one in particular, I feel like we have to work a little bit harder to move through it because it is surrounding us at all times. If you turn on the news, if you open social media, if you go into a group event, like you can feel that is present. And we can talk a little bit about what signs of anxiety are, because then you can notice that in the sphere around you, thus helping you to notice it within yourself. But we have overthinking, we have a racing mind, spending a lot of time in worry and future tripping. So it's like all of these what if scenarios, all of these stressful scenarios. The news is really good at doing that to us. We have that like racing mind, and with that we have this like jumpy on edge energy. We also can have that feeling of that sinking feeling in the gut or the fluttering in the heart or you just feel uneasy. You're not on stable ground. That is a really good description of anxiety, and I'm sure you can describe exactly what it feels like within your own body. That's something I would really like you to do, is pause for a moment, or when you turn off this episode, just contemplate, like, how does anxiety present within my body? When I say the words, I'm feeling anxious, what causes my mind to identify as anxious? Isn't that funny? Like, we can say, oh, I'm feeling anxious, I'm feeling sad, I'm feeling whatever, but it's okay. What's causing you to say I'm feeling anxious? There's a reason you are associating the word anxious with how you're feeling, and it's because of the sensation that is happening within your body. So you got to ask yourself, when I say I'm feeling anxious, or I have anxiety, or I'm experiencing anxiety, then what does that mean to me? What sensations am I experiencing that my mind is then associating with and naming as anxiety? This is really helpful in the emotional realm, because we do have a tendency to identify as an emotion, and you are not that emotion, right? The emotion is just an energetic experience that is moving through you. It is not you. So instead of saying I am anxious or I have anxiety, it's really helpful, even though it might not feel that way in the moment, on the greater scale for our conscious and subconscious mind, it is really helpful to say I am experiencing anxiety, or I felt anxious in that moment, or even better, I feel fluttery in my belly, right? I feel a tightness in my chest. Identify the sensation even more than identifying and naming the emotion, because when we go into the sensation, that's of course going to help us release the emotion. We're not getting into all of that today, but we want to separate ourselves from the emotion. It is not you. And in fact, my perspective on anxiety that has really helped is that anxiety is not even an emotion. I call anxiety a faux motion, F-A-U-X. Anxiety is a faux motion. It is actually a mask that is covering up deeper emotion within you. It's asking you to go deeper instead of staying on the surface. Anxiety is very surface level. It's very nervous system, mind, buzzy, high frequency. It's that hummingbird, right? It's really buzzy, fluttery, uprooted energy. And what's so interesting about it being a faux motion is that, as I said, it's masking a deeper emotion. And as a society, we are more comfortable in anxiety. I said we have an anxious society. So as a society, we're more comfortable with anxiety. So even though we know that anxiety is not even a real emotion, we try to treat anxiety. Anxiety is actually a symptom of deeper things happening in the body, whether it's a nervous system dysregulation or deeper emotions or traumas or other things that are going on that need to be addressed. But as a society, we're like, oh, we're all comfortable with anxiety. Let's stay here on the surface and try to treat this surface thing. But treating the surface thing may have temporary effects that are supportive. Great, love it. And it doesn't make the anxiety ever fully go away, because anxiety is covering up something deeper. But we're really uncomfortable with deep emotions and like some of those heavy hitter emotions, like we'll talk about sadness and anger in our society. So then we stay in the anxiety. Isn't that fascinating? So another one of my perspectives that I carry is that anxiety isn't actually something that we should have to manage all the time. I know we hear this, if you have to manage your anxiety, let's manage your anxiety. Again, while that might be a temporary supportive tool, it's not a long-term tool, because again, anxiety is asking us to go deeper. Again, I'm not a therapist, I'm not a psychiatrist. I am just sharing my own perspective that has been really supportive for me and many clients over the years when it comes to this topic, because I do feel like there's a blanket perspective on anxiety, and I feel like there's more that we can talk about that can be really helpful in accompanying the other supportive tools. So these are just things that you can try on and see how they work within your system. So if you don't have to manage anxiety, it's actually something that you want to go deeper into, then that leads us to the next topic, which is, what does anxiety need? If it doesn't need to be managed, what does it need? It needs us to be present and in our bodies. Present and in our bodies. Take a moment to consider that. How often am I present and in my body? Maybe not so often, right? We're busy. We have a lot of things going on. We have worries, we have fears, we have thoughts, we have all the stuff that is leading the charge. And it does cause a lot of anxiety in the system. And when we're able to stop, look, and listen, when we're able to go inward and drop into the body and into the present moment, that is a solve for anxiety. Because anxiety, it's so not in the present. It's up above and usually forward or backward of where we are in the present moment. So just by pulling yourself back into the present, and anxiety is more mind and nervous system. So by pulling you down and into your body, it can really help. Now, of course, the challenge is, okay, how do I become present when I'm so anxious and stressed that I can't sit down for a moment because it feels like I'm going to die? I know there's a lot of intensity that can come with anxiety, and I honor that. I have been there. I have felt it. I have worked with many people through it. It can be extremely debilitating. And anxiety can be, we talked about freeze response. Like anxiety can tip us into freeze response. It can tip us into fight and flight response. It's not a place we want to stay in. We want to be able to drop into the present and drop into the bodies. And I can't go into all of that right now because what did I say at the beginning? I don't want to overwhelm you. But I do want you to see that this is something that asks us to go deeper. And the simple process of going deeper can just be following the stop, look, and listen process and follow the anxiety in your body. It's going to be uncomfortable, right? I remember I had this like very weird spurt of anxiety earlier this year where it overtook me for a month. And it was so crazy to watch as I was moving through it. It was like some old stuff came up that needed to be processed, and I didn't realize that was what was happening. And my system like went into anxiety because it didn't know what to do with all this information. I realized and actually was able to address it through this work. But I just remember thinking every day, it was like all my mind could do was think, I'm so anxious, I'm so anxious, I'm so anxious. I feel anxious, I have anxiety, I'm anxious. And it was like stuck on this loop of just naming the feeling and just thinking about how anxious I am, which only made me feel more anxious, which of course can affect your sleep. If you have a lot of anxiety, I imagine you have sleep issues because the whole nervous system it's on high alert. It doesn't feel settled. So in order for it to feel safe and settled, we need to bring it home. We need to come back into the body. And there's a lot of ways to do this. I do it through emotional clearing. I've worked through somatic practices. You can look at cortisol. There's a million ways to address this. But coming back to the body, I have found is really one of the most effective ways, and bringing that like hugging, rooted, settling energy. It doesn't need more mind, because likely if you're feeling super anxious, your mind is super active and it's future tripping. It's obsessing about the past. It's ruminating. It's double, triple thinking like, oh, did I say that the right way? It's very heady when we're in anxiety. The anxious mind is so stressed that it might feel really unsafe to go into the body because it's, oh, I can't take my eye off the ball. Anxiety will tell us if we're not worrying, everything's going to fall apart. So it really is about creating safety within the body and trust within your body and in the presence of the now. That is a take that I have found really helpful with anxiety that I don't think is talked about very often. And I'd love for you to try it, knowing that you don't have to just live with and manage anxiety at all times. Yes, it will come up. That's the thing, is we all have minds, we all have nervous systems, things can get out of whack. It is okay for it to come up, but just like any other actual emotion, anxiety is not here to stay with us and to become us. Anxiety is actually an indicator of our need to drop into the present and go in deeper and check in. It's a notification from your body, from your system of, hey, there's something that you need to look at. And where do you look at it? In the present, in the body. Because if we go into the past, if we go into the future, if we go into the mind, we're going to start spinning and spiraling, and it's not going to actually solve or resolve the anxiety that is covering up the deeper thing. So it's a notification, it's information, and it's a vibration that is asking you to actually feel the sensation. And you have to feel the sensation in the present within the body. So that is your embodiment practice to do with anxiety. See it, feel it, and notice what it's saying and what it has to share with you. Whew. That's it. So that's anxiety. I'm so excited to keep going on this series. If you want to go deeper, I could talk and talk about anxiety, but this is really giving you that new way to look at it that actually gives you a say in this faux motion. And it's not something you have to manage. It's not something that is out of your control, but you actually have more power and say than maybe you have thought before on your anxiety. And so if you actually really want to understand how to implement these practices into your life to actually start to resolve that from within and really take this perspective and turn it into a practice, something that will actually make change in your life, then I would love to have you in the Emotions Decoded audio course. I'm so excited. I haven't offered this live yet, so I haven't actually released the information, but in the show notes, I will put the more information. So you can click on the link. It'll take you to the page that gives you everything you need to know about this program, and including the start date, including the investment, and the what to expect and how it actually works. We are going to be covering these 3 core emotions, which are anxiety, anger, and sadness, and really diving in not just the what and the why, but how to bring them up and resolve them the moment they arise so that they're not continuing to build up in your system. That is what is so challenging for these emotions, is we don't know what to do with them. And so they keep building up and building up in our system, causing bigger and bigger issues, when of course we're going to feel any of these emotions or faux emotions at any time. They're allowed to be here, but the key, the core, the essence, the essential thing that is missing in our emotional education is how to move through the emotion that arises so it doesn't get pushed down, suppressed, ignored, avoided, and eventually it will explode when we keep pushing it down. It will explode either through an emotional outburst or through really severe symptoms like panic attacks, like physical manifestations that we didn't want in our bodies and our systems. And so this emotional hygiene practice is what I'm going to be teaching you in this audio course. So it's 14 days and you'll get a daily audio from me, which is less than 20 minutes, and it will have teaching and embodiment. And I'm walking you through a 14-day process so that you can truly learn how to, it's a 4-step process over 14 days that will truly teach you how to learn and find relief from these emotions the moment they arise, without having to spend all this time analyzing why they're there and thinking about them, which can cause a lot more anxiety. So we're going to discover the root cause of anxiety, anger, and sadness, Every day for 14 days, you're going to get an audio from me that will have teaching and actual embodiment practice so that you're actually creating an emotional hygiene routine that works. Like, it works. It's actually going to help with these emotions that arise, so you're not going to be stuck with them, not knowing what to do with them. So that's the real beauty and value of this. I am so excited. We're going to have a live Q&A. The program is delivered via a private podcast feed, which makes it so easy for you to listen each day during the 14 days. The audio will drop. You'll get it. You'll get to listen to it whenever you're ready during that day and integrate it into your space. And we're building day after day so that by the end of the 14 days, you'll be really clear on what these emotions are, how they present in your body, and what to do when they show up so they don't build up. And it'll be really easy to integrate into your daily life because it'll be right in your podcast app. And then midway through, we are going to be doing a live Q&A where we get on Zoom and I answer any questions that you have about the work. We can do some coaching, and of course, any clearing that is necessary with the group, we can do live on that call. I'm so excited to work with you in this capacity. I made the price point super accessible. It's $197, and it's going to be this really powerful transformation that is also really accessible and easy for you to do every day, because that's where the real power of this is. It's like flossing your teeth. We know we're supposed to do it, but it's not until you go to the dentist 6 months later that you have all that plaque built up and they're scraping and you think to yourself, I don't want to have to go through this again, right? You don't, because this is going to teach you what it really looks like to floss and the best floss to use and the best practices for flossing. And you're actually going to floss every day, right? You're going to have your emotional hygiene practice so that you don't have these big explosions, these big buildups that manifest in ways that you really don't want to deal with. And we're sitting there scraping you off the floor. Let's not go there. Let's make this easier, tangible, and more digestible. So that is Emotions Decoded. I am so excited to have you in the program. And in the meantime, I trust that you got what you needed about this anxiety episode, and that I hope it helped you see things in a different way than maybe you have before. Until next week, thank you for tuning in. Thank you for joining me in another episode of the Tuning In podcast. If you loved this episode, please rate and review it or share it with a friend. If you want to go deeper into the realm of emotions and learn the language of your body, check out my audio course, Emotions Decoded, at alignful.com/audio. As always, you can follow along with my journey on Instagram at Dana_Evans. See you next week.